So let's continue on. I'd like you to please get into Visual Studio. And once you do, as always, let's create a new project. And then let's just call this kind of what it is, I guess. It'll be a console app for .NET Framework. And we're going to call this time class, one word, with a big T and a big C. Save it where you always save your classes. All right. And create. Now, all you're going to have in here now is going to be your main, which I think is called program.cs. All right. So this will come up in a second, hopefully. When you create a program like this, whether it is a console program like we have here, or it's a GUI, you need a main. Okay, but if you look up on the screen, please, you don't need to call this thing program.cs. You can, but you don't need to. So let's right mouse click on here where it says program.cs, and let's rename this. And we're going to call it time class tester.cs. Says you are renaming a file. Would you also like to perform a rename in the project, so for all those internal files? Yes, we would. So now we've got, so notice, see how this changed? Okay. Now we're going to add our time class. We're going to add the class first, then we're going to come back to here and write the code to test it. Does that make sense? All right, so right mouse click on here where it says time class. Right there, right mouse click and choose add. Go down to the very bottom and choose class. And we're going to keep it simple. We're just going to call it time. Now, you got your choice. You can remove all of this and type in time, so it says time.cs, which is fine. Or you can just remove all of it and just type in time, and it'll save it as a .cs file. So either way will work. So click add, and now this is what we have. Now, we're going to need this first thing, this using system. We're not going to need any of these, so I'm going to remove them. But we are going to bring back in our old friend using static system.console. All right? So right now, that's all that you should have. With me? All right. So the first thing typically that you do in here is you put in your instance variables. But we're going to put in 3 constants. All right, we're going to have something I just called min, because it's the minimum hours, seconds, or minutes. It's going to be set to 0. So I just come in here and said constants. So const int min equals 0, const int max hours equals 23. Oops, fix that. And const int, I called it max minsec because it's whether it's the minutes or the seconds, equals, and that's 59. Do you all understand what those constants are for? All right, so that's the minimum number of either seconds, minutes, or hours that you can have. The maximum number of hours, because we're using military time. All right, we'll have it that we can put it in military time, and it'll still show it to us AM PM. We're going to do that later. All right, so those are our constants. That next we're going to put in our instance variables, and probably they're what you think they would be. Private int hours, private int minutes, private in fact, let's just make them singular, not plural. So we'll just call it hour, minute, and second. Did I have to do that? Of course not, but I did. Just to me that makes a little more sense. So this would be valid range is 0 to 23. Valid range is 0 to 59. And again, the valid range is 0 to 59. So remember, any place in here where we see 0 like that, we're going to replace it with min. And when we see 59, we're going to replace it with max min sec. Does that make sense? Okay. And any place we might be using 23 will not be max hours. All right. So first, let's come through here. And you may or may not remember this term from yesterday, but we're going to write the constructor, and we're actually going to write it in a couple different ways. That's called overloading the constructor. So we're going to have a blank one that's not going to do a darn thing. So I'm going to say public. In fact, this actually is called a no-arg constructor. It's a constructor with no arguments. So you say public, followed by the name of the class, which is time. So public time, paren, we're not passing anything in, and that's it, just curly braces. It's not doing anything. Did you hear me? It's not doing anything. So we'll also have a full arg constructor. Declare a body because it's not marked. Yeah, we already have a body in there. That's okay. All right. Don't let this bother you. Oh, no semicolon there. That's why I'm getting that error. Okay. The reason that I'm getting an error right now, the reason that I'm getting this error is because we have not yet written set time. We're going to write that next. I want to make sure that yours looks like this and you've got only that one error right there. If you got other errors and you want me to move up or down in the code, just let me know. Once we finish this today, I don't expect you to start working on it yet, but I'm going to give you the labs for Chapter 9. All right? Tomorrow what we're going to do is we'll try to do at least one of those labs as a class, and I'll give you some additional examples. Okay? And if that works out okay, Thursday and Friday then, we'll just have them as labs. Now, hopefully you'll have some time by the end of the week, too, that that test, that written test is not due, but you can at least look at the material. After the break, probably what I'll do is Monday when you come back, I'll try to write some kind of a pre-test where I'll say, hey, this is kind of like what the test will be. Do this. And I'll give you from 8 till about 10:30 or so to do it. Then I'll go over it with you. And then Tuesday when we come back, so what, our break is the 9th through the 13th, so that would be the 17th. That would then, I think it's 17th, that would be your test. Then the rest of the week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we're going to go over Chapter 14, which is on inheritance. All right. By the middle to the end of the following week, we'll have tested on that. Just so you know, chapter 16 in here is real short. So we'll go over 15 and 16 in the following week. But the hope is by the end of March that we'll be through this part of the book. Now, I just sent Evan an email to show you this. Okay, good. Because I said, hey, what? He's ahead of us. Okay, just so you know, he's ahead of us. So I said, hi, Evan, you're right. You are ahead of me. I will finish chapter 12. It's what I just told you. All right, and I said, as we're going to be done with the book no later than the end of the month, as you will be done by mid-March, so they're about 2 weeks ahead of us. I said, what are you doing? So he said, yeah, I'm going to give them a big thing on databases, which is great. That means we'll be able to spend all of April on databases. And in my opinion, at least, that's great. You're going to get a lot more coverage than you'd normally get in this class. And we'll start out real slow. I'm going to recommend that you load some software that after we get done with this, you might just want to say, do I really need that software anymore? And if you don't need it anymore, you can just uninstall it. Okay, we'll talk about that stuff later. But I wanted to know where they were. I'm glad you got back to me. It was bugging me. All right, so. You might have done what I did, and that was to remove this one at the bottom. So there should be 3 of them at the bottom. Okay. All right, so like I said, we have not written set time. All right, so let's write that now. Public void set, not et, set time, int hour, int minute, int second. You'll notice as soon as we do this, notice that error that we had up above went away. All right. Now, we're going to assume that the hours and minutes and seconds that we pass in are valid. Did you hear me? And what if they're not? We're going to handle that later. But for right now, we're just going to say this. Hour, no, I want a big H there. What did I screw up on? Hold on a minute. Oh, okay. We want to say here hour equals hour. I'm just going to put this in for right now. Minute equals minute. Second equals second. Now, that looks a little weird. In just a minute, we're going to write those getters and setters. Did you hear me? So we're going to have a capital H for hour, a capital M for minute, and a capital S for second. Did you both, or all of you, did you hear me say that? Make sure when we do this, go back and capitalize all those in just a minute. Problem is right now they don't exist. So even if I put a capital H in there, oh, it does keep it. Okay, good. That's what I wanted to say. And it's giving me errors because we don't have a capital H for hours, a capital M for minutes, a capital S for seconds. I'm going to make those right now. So this is going to be a little more extensive than what we did before. Why? Because we want to check in here when we set hours, we want to make sure they're between 0 and 23. We want to make sure minutes are between 0 and 59. We want to make sure seconds are between 0 and 59. Does all that make sense? All right? Because basically, that's not all, but that's most of what we have left in this class that we're doing right now. Then we have to write one more method that's got about 5 or 6 lines. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say hour getter setter. This is where we're going to write that getter setter for hour. So I'm going to say here public. I don't know what happened there, but something did. Public int hour with a big H. Notice, look on the screen here. See how the arrow went way up above? All right. So we're going to say get return hour. That's our get. Remember, if we came in here, if we did not put in a set, this would be read-only. We don't want it to be read-only. We want to be able to set the time. All right, so we're going to put in a set. Set. Again, this is a little longer because, as I just told you, we're going to have to check and make sure that the value is between 0 and 23. So we'll do it the other way. We'll say, oh, brother, there's something wrong with, I think I've told you this before, there's something wrong with the pad on here. And what happens is after a while, and I'm supposed to be able to hit Control F7 and it's supposed to fix. It's not. So when I touch it, it's throwing my mouse all over the place. So, all right, so if value less than min or value greater than max. So in other words, what are we doing right there? It's not max. It's max hours. All right. For lack of better words, you could say perform range check. Isn't that really what we're doing? All right. In my opinion, at least it is. 1, 2. All right. So if it's out of range, the program is going to end. Did you hear me? We're going to literally throw an exception and make the program end. Now, that's pretty severe. We could have just set it to a default value or something. Not doing that. So I'm going to say throw new argument out of range. Hold on. Out of range exception. All right. And we're going to put in here name of value must be between min and max hours. All right, why am I getting errors here? That's supposed to be that. All right. Argument out of range exception. Why am I getting an error? Throw new argument out of range exception. I wrote this right before. What's that? Thank you. Still wasn't. Thank you. Let's see, I wrote this before class and it worked just fine. Hour equal value. That's the whole thing with a semicolon. All right, I'll let you type that in when you guys said you got it done. We'll go back over the whole thing. All caught up? All right. What this says is, notice again the error's gone from here. We're assuming that we've already checked to make sure the hour is valid down here. So when we get it, we're already assuming it's valid. This says if the number we passed in for a time, all right, so we're trying to set the hour here. If that time is less than 0 or it's greater than 23, just print an error, okay, and get out. You're done. We've just decided this is a catastrophic enough error that we want to be finished. All right. Otherwise, there's no else. But you know, if you throw this, the program's dead in the water. We could have said else here, but it's redundant. So this says the number was valid, so we're going to accept it. All right. Now, we want to do the same thing for minutes and for seconds. Please look up on the screen. We want to change this to minute, max, min seconds. That can, max, min seconds, and minutes. Does that make sense? Then we want to do the same thing for seconds. So you can either, if you like to type, that's not a joke, but if you like to type, go ahead and do that. I'm just going to go, and from my comment here, I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom right here. I'm going to copy it to the clipboard, hit enter a couple times, and paste it in again. So my second one will be my minute getter setter. So this will be minute. You can watch if you want, or just do it yourselves. So let me make this smaller. There it is. I know that's kind of hard to read, but I think hopefully your eyes are good enough. You can still read it. And then I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to replace minute with second. All right. Again, look up on the screen. Notice how that second one is now no longer errored out. I'm asking you this question. Does what we're doing make a little bit of sense? All right, I'm not saying, hey, does it totally make sense? Can you sit and do this tomorrow? Can we have the test tomorrow? No, I'm not going to do that. And I will tell you, I asked Evan how people did on the test. I don't like it. But he's told me, I want you to give this test. And again, so guess what? I'm giving that test. Well, my hope is I'm going to be able to give you something similar to it, and we'll be able to go over it so it won't be like a big shock to you. All right. Then down below that one, I'm going to come in and say second getter setter. So this will be second. 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 Now, even though these routines are really similar to one another, write them as separate routines. Don't try to write something generic that'll handle both of them. That's not a good idea. And if you look now, all of my errors are gone that we had in here. All right, so there was the hour getter setter, if you need that. There was the minute getter setter, if you need that. There was the second getter setter, if you need that. All right, we have to write one more routine. The routine is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's 10 lines. And that includes the name of the routine line and 2 lines of curly braces. Did you hear me? Okay. When you tell, if I went and created a bunch of time objects, okay, So let's just say that I created a bunch. That's what we're going to do in main. Did you hear me? If I tell it to do a right line of the time object, if I tell it to do a right line, what it's going to do is it's going to give me something that looks like this. And you'll be like, what the heck is that? What it prints out by default is the address in memory where the object is located. That's what that is. You're going to get something that looks really ugly like that. We don't want that. We want it to say that when you print out the time, we want it to print out, for example, if it was right now, we would want it to print out 9:26:00 a.m. Does that make sense? So we're going to override what's called the toString method. The toString method by default just shows you that goofy address. We want to override it to tell it to do what we want it to do. All right? So, make this a little bigger. Come down to the bottom. Right before, you got two curly braces underneath this. All right? And we're going to write public override string to string. Wow. And it gave me this thing, return base dot to string. Just get rid of that if it gives you that. We want this empty. I'm getting an error now because I'm telling it it's returning a string and I'm not returning anything yet. We're going to return something in just a minute. Now, you can type in what I'm typing in, all right? But I had to move one of the lines, and I want to show you why I had to move the line after we put it in, okay? So I put it in like this. I said hour equals hour equal min or hour equal 12 colon hour and I don't expect that to make a lot of sense, so we're going to go over that in just a minute. Looks ugly, only because it is. Got that? All right, what this says in English is, if the hour is either 0, if it's 0, or if it's 12, it should be 12. Isn't that the case? I mean, unless you have a military alarm clock at home, if it's midnight, doesn't your clock say 12:00, something like that? That's what mine does. All right. So this says if it's either midnight or it's 12 noon, 12. Otherwise, take whatever the hour is and modulo it by 12. Well, if it's in the morning, if it's 8 a.m., you with me? If it's 8, or right now it's 9 a.m., right? So if it's 9 a.m., 9 modulo 12 equals 9. Not 12 doesn't go into 9, but the remainder is 9. However, if it's 9 at night, that's 2100. So 12 hours from now will be 2130. 21 modulo 12 is 9. So this will say 9 whether it's AM or PM. Make sense? All right. Now we're going to create some strings. There's nothing special about these names. It's just what I happen to call them. So what do we got? That needs prep. Okay. All right. Why don't you stop typing for a second, if you wouldn't, just look up here. All this says is, if we've got a time that's before 9, whether it's AM or PM, we're going to put a 0 at the beginning of it. We don't really have to for hours, but we're going to anyway. Are you with me? All right. And then we're going to do the same exact thing for minutes and for seconds. So we're doing the same thing with all 3 of those. Now that I think about it, it's probably stupid to put a 0 before the hour, but if you don't like it, you can comment it out too. Okay. Now, I don't know about you. Maya and Keegan have a little bit more experience than you guys do, having gone through the class last semester. But sometimes I'll go and I'll write a program and I'll run it. You always want to run the program with a lot of test data. And I ran this morning with a lot of test data. And I noticed, that's right, that's wrong. I was getting almost as many wrong as I was right. All right? So I'm going to explain to you, even before we write our test, what I was getting wrong and why it was wrong. Okay? So I want to be able on the end to put a blank space in either AM or PM. With me? All right? But I want to do AM or PM only if the hour is less than 12. Okay? So I'm going to say here string. And I just called it AM, PM, str equals okay, I'll let you get caught up. Now, I'm going to move one of these lines, and I'm going to show you why. This is the error that I had. If you look up here at line 105, see that hour line right there? All right, then underneath it, see that hour string? let's suppose that I had put 21 in here for the hour. With me? So I put 21 in for the hour. It came in here and it said hour equal min. Well, that's not 21. 21's not 0. 21's not 12. So we want to take 21 and modulo it by 12. So this becomes 9. Would you agree? The problem is, if I do that, it's going to put a 0 in. It's going to put a 0 in front. That's okay, but since it's less than 12, it's going to say 9 a.m. even when it's 9 p.m. So what I had to do was I had to take this line for the AM PM string and move that up to the top. This one right here. And hopefully that made at least a little bit of sense to you, what I just said. So we're making a string here. Okay, we're making a string. So if I put in the current time, if I put in, let's just say it's 9, I'm passing in for the hours, 37 for the minutes, and let's say 29 for the seconds. It's going to print out as 09:37:29 space AM. Does that make sense? That's what we're shooting for. All right. So we've got the class is now written. Okay. The class is done. Hopefully you don't have any errors. I don't have any errors or warnings that I can see on here. All right. So I'm going to do a file, save all. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to open up in main the old, what we used to call program.cs, but we changed the name of this to timetester.cs, and we're going to write this one. Now that last one, believe it or not, was about 110 lines. This is half that many. So we should be able to write this, ideally at least, get it done by 10 o'clock. All right? So I'm going to come in here, and the first thing we're going to do, I wouldn't say exciting is the right word, but it's kind of neat because it's the first time we're doing this, and that is we're going to instantiate 4 time objects. So this is the first time we're actually creating objects based off of a class that we've made. Does all that make sense? All right. When you do that, you have to say the type of class you're using, which is time. Okay? There's going to be 4 times we're going to pass in. I could call them time 1, time 2, time 3, and time 4. But that's too much typing. So I just call them T1, T2, T3, and T4. All right? So we're going to call it here, and we're going to say equals new time. All right? And believe it or not, even though we have that constructor that has nothing in it, look on the screen if you would. That should, remember how I told you we set default values here? So that should be setting hour, minute, and second all to 0. If we do it right. All right, so ideally when we run this, it should print out 00:00:00. That's what we're shooting for. Because it's going to take all of the defaults, plus we told it to put a 0 in front of it when necessary. So that's what we're hoping prints out. Then we're going to create a second time object, T2, and that's going to be equal to new time, and we're only passing in an hours figure. Did you hear me? Just one, so it's hours, so the other 2 should default. Oh, and this should say AM, and this should say AM. Then we're going to make another one. And that one's going to have hours, and it's going to have minutes, but no seconds. So that one should print out 22 divided by 12, 10, 19, 00 p.m. And finally, we're going to add everything. $21, $46, $56. So that should print out 11, not print out 11, 46, 56 p.m. Now look up on the screen. Go ahead and type that in. But when you get done, please look up on the screen and tell me whether or not that makes sense. So the first time we're passing in nothing. So it's going to grab all of our default values. 0 for the hours, 0 for the minutes, 0 for the seconds. Make sense? And we told it that if that number is less than 10 and 0 is less than 10, it should print 00, 00, 00, 00. All right? The next one, we're only passing in hours. So it's 2 for the hours, nothing for the minutes, nothing for the seconds. So the hours is 2, the minute should default to 0, the second should default to 0. And that's why it should print that out. Then we pass in both an hours and a minutes. 22 is hours, 19 is minutes, second should default to 0. 22 divided by 12 with the remainder is 10. All right, 19 for the minutes, so it should be 10 colon 19 colon 00 p.m. because it was a time that was greater than 12, greater than or equal to 12. You have a question?
Does it matter what you put in there from 19? Could you put like 50 or 3 or
You could, sure. Yeah. If you want to put something else in to try your own, that's fine. The last one, we're putting in everything. A figure for hours, a figure for minutes, and a figure for seconds. So the 21 should be the hours, and when we modulo it by 12, it should be, that's actually 9, isn't it? It should be 23, sorry. Well, look on the screen. Either change that to 23, which would give you an 11, or change that to 09. You can do that too. It doesn't matter. Okay? But that's got 21 for hours, which will be 9 p.m., 46 for minutes, 56 for seconds. But what we've done here is, with those 4 tests, we've tested our possibilities. You cannot have, for instance, if you look on the screen here, this has got hours and minutes, correct? You can't have one that just has hours and seconds. It doesn't work like that. All right, because with those default values that we did earlier in here, I guess, those defaults that are right here, when you do those, it says if you only have one, default these 2. If you have 2, just default that one. You can't tell it which one to default. All right, and the order there matters. If we had changed around the order, it would have thought the second value we were putting in is seconds and not minutes, if we'd have flipped those. All right, so the good news is now we've got 16 print line statements, and then we've got a try catch with 10 lines, and then we're done. Now I'm going to write the first thing of print lines, then I'm going to copy it 3 times and just make changes. I'm going to suggest you do the same. But you know, as always, do what you want to do. All right, look on the screen. Again, I don't need these, but I am going to have my using static system.console. Okay? Why? So I don't have to write console.writeLine or system.console.writeLine. I just want to write writeLine. Okay? So let's start writing them. All right, so print out time values. I tried to put a little bit of a comment here so you could kind of figure out what we're doing. Okay, so there's the first one. It ain't going anywhere, just so you know. How about this? Printout time 1 values. And we'll put out here printout time 2 values. Should print out that. I'll let you catch up. You guys have all that? I'll tell you what, I'll just move up this far. There. So I'm going to copy again. This will be the time 3 values. And this one should print out this. And then finally we'll have number 4. And it's got to be a T3 here, and T3 there. Make sure if you're doing all that copying, T1, T1, T2, T2, T3, T3, T4, T4. And that last one should print out this. Look on the screen if you would. Moment of truth, so to speak. Whoa, I didn't put in a read line. You saw that. You need a read line at the bottom. Still always forget that. There they are. 12. All the defaults. AM. Defaults for minutes and seconds. Defaults for seconds. No defaults. All right. But I'm asking you a question here. What didn't we test? What didn't we test? How about an outer range number for one of those? Okay, we didn't test that. And the reason we didn't is because we said earlier, if that happens, throw an exception and stop the program. It wouldn't have done this, so we're going to do that at the bottom. Does that make sense? All right. So we're going to attempt to initialize with bad data. We'll still get this, and then it'll blow up after that. Does that make sense? All right. Keep that run going. So right up above the read line, I'm going to put in here attempt to initialize with invalid values. Okay? And I'm going to put it into a try block. You now know what a try block is. We have talked about those. All right, literally we've got about 10 lines and we're finished. And I'm going to put invalid stuff for everything. Did you hear me? We could write 3 different tests. We could write one with an invalid hour, one with an invalid minute, one with an invalid second. We could do that, but as soon as it finds something bad, it's stopping anyway. So I just put all of them together. 27, 75, and 93. So I'm trying to do that. And I'm going to catch that argument out of range exception. And I'm going to give it a name this time. I'm going to call it EX for exception. You can call it anything. You can call it AOORE or whatever you want. So console.writeLine. I don't need console. Why do I keep putting that in there? WriteLine exception while initializing time T6, WriteLine ex.message. And guess what? We're done. Would you agree it should blow up right there? Would you agree with that? Look on the screen if you would. I'll come right back to this, but look. See it? It says parameter value, actual value was 27. It only showed the 27 because that's where it blew up. I could write it, I could do it again, just so you see this. And I want to make sure you do. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to make this 23. And I'm going to run it again. And now it blew up and it said 75. See, it showed it blew up on the second one. Then I could come back in here and again make this 55, but leave that at 93, and it tells me